The last video you will ever need on discharging debt using a private trust. What if I told you that the power to discharge any debt, from credit cards to mortgages, doesn't come from a loophole, but from a structure older than the banking system itself? This is the final breakdown on how to use a private trust to discharge debt the right way, and how to use the same frameworks to build generational wealth. So make sure you stick all the way to the end so that you can be able to get this information that nobody is talking about. Before we dive into the video, this is not financial, legal, or tax advice. Remember to do your own due diligence and take accountability. You accept all the risk. If you don't, look it up for yourself, okay? I'm here only putting this for educational purposes. The second thing, if you're brand new, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. 98% of you guys watch my videos and probably are not subscribed. So hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching this right now, like up. All right. I've done many videos on how to discharge debt using a trust. Okay. But I'll let this be more of like a big picture flagship type of video that you can always come back to and rewatch multiple times. All right. I'm super excited to talk about this topic. So let's dive into another one. A couple of things to kind of just set the stage of what we're going to be talking about. All right. And everything that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be putting together a explainer that I'm going to link in the school community. OK, so if you aren't a part of the school community, it's in the link in the description. And at the end, you can go ahead and tap in or check it out on your own. But everything I'm going to talk about, it may be an information overload to some people, but I'm going to go ahead and put it on paper and put some actionable steps in my school community for you guys to see it, if you're coming from the school community. Now, I want to set the stage and tell you guys exactly what I'm going to be talking about today, so you can decide whether you're going to stick around all the way to the end if I'm going to hit those key points, okay? First thing I'm going to talk about is just the foundation, what a trust actually is. Then I'm going to dive into why the trust is the key to discharge. Then I'm going to talk about how to set up a private trust for debt discharge. We're going to talk about how to set it up. You want to make sure you have your notes for that. The laws that support the process, some misunderstandings, and debunking some myths when it comes to the trust, okay? My goal today is to give you real explanations, okay? I'm gonna try not to be chaotic or mystical. I'm gonna try to keep it plain and simple and talk to you like a normal human being, all right? I'm not gonna try to wow you with all this extravagant language. So let's just dive in. I'm done yapping. Now, a trust is not just a document. It's a legal entity of separation. So when you create a trust, just understand that the whole purpose of the trust is to separate you from the asset. Okay, if we're talking about as it pertains to you. So it divides the property between the creator, which is the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. Okay, the beauty of this structure is that the liabilities belong to the trust, not the trustee or the beneficiary. This allows you to move in commerce privately without control and not ownership. The person in control of the property without owning it is the one who truly has the freedom. So when you look at UCC 1-201, it defines a person as trust entities, okay? You can look at the Truth in Lending Act and it'll say a person is a natural person or a organization. But when we're talking about UCC 1, and when it defines person, it's specifically talking about the corporation side of it, all right? Another statute was important, which I haven't really talked about too much on this channel, and this is beyond just the statutes, but the restatements, okay? So the restatement third of trust, section 2, all right? And obviously there's this website, HEN online, and you can read this, okay? But this is a breakdown trust law and different regulations that goes into it. But this specific section pretty much defines a trust as a fiduciary relationship for a managing property. So thinking of this, trust is not a person per se, but just think of it as a business, okay? And if your straw man is also a business, they're kind of the same thing, okay? Your straw man in a trust or your straw man in the LLC essentially are the same things, but the powers that they have or the law jurisdiction that they are a part of is a little bit different. So when you think of the straw man is always going to be in the debtor role, doesn't have any rights, okay? Then we dive in, and that's more on the commerce law side. Then we dive into business. Okay, your LLC has different powers and different rights, but it's very similar to the straw man in a sense. Okay, now the use of it is different, but it's very similar. Then we talk about the trust. The trust is a higher form of law. Okay, thinking of trust, you have to move in honor. You have to do good business, if that makes sense. Operate in trust. And I'm not an expert on trust law, but equity comes easy when it comes to a trust. So this is why that trust now allows you to separate the straw man, where they're going to treat you like a dead entity or someone that doesn't have a right, to the point where now if you are dealing within a trust, now you can start to have these type of conversations that we are having much more fluidly. Okay, but that's just the foundations of a trust. All right. Now, why is the trust the key to discharge? Because in law, you, the natural man or woman, and the legal name in all caps are not the same entity. So understanding that this body is not all caps Nicholas Burns, okay? The all caps Nicholas Burns is attached to me, okay? It's not me, it is attached to me. As a matter of fact, I'm authorized to use it, okay? The legal name is a construct, and it's an estate created for commercial use. If you're a natural breathing person, you can't create credit out of thin air, okay? This is why you can't play the game, but the straw man is the monopoly piece. So when you think of the game Monopoly, you yourself are not in the game of Monopoly. So outside rules don't apply in the game of Monopoly. You get what I'm saying? Only the rules of Monopoly apply. So you have to use that piece. That's what the straw man is for, okay? And a private trust reclaims that control. Instead of letting the state act as a trustee, you become the trustee of your own estate. Okay? So in a sense, once the trust is properly established, it can accept assignment of debts, issue tender for value, and use set-off procedures lawfully. You don't escape the system, you step into your rightful position within it. The idea behind debt discharge, or, the key is when you separate yourself from the debt, you are nullifying the obligation from your natural person. We are upset because our natural person is receiving the adverse effects or has to be responsible. We're not saying we don't want to be responsible, but what they do is they tack on negative information that can hinder your credibility. But what if we took that and made it into took that debt, assigned it to the private trust, and now the private trust is the one that is handling the negativity. But now the negativity is private. Now we're having a private communication. And it's not like there's a credit report for your trust. I mean, obviously there's tax reporting and things like that, but it's not like you're applying for credit with your trust. Okay? So it's not that you'll ever escape that obligation, but what will happen is that obligation won't be affecting your natural person. So now you could be able to maneuver through your everyday life, apply for credit, blah, 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 and not be affected by those negative items. But you still hold the responsibility. Some people think that creating a trust takes away the obligation or the responsibility. Somehow you're going to be able to commit crimes and not be put in jail. You're not get pulled over, whatever the case may be. All it does is give you legal leverage so that when they are trying to do something to your straw man or whatever the case may be, as far as debt is concerned, you assign well, let me not jump the gun yet. Okay. But long story short, you would assign the debt to the trust. And if you assign the debt to the trust, then now it's outside of the straw man's name. Okay. The trust is private. And if you're having private communication, unless somebody says that you can take this communication outside, or unless something fraudulent happens, something illegal happens in that private communication, it should not go public. Okay. So let's talk about how to set up a private trust for debt discharge. Now I'm going to talk about how to set up a private trust. Okay. But I don't want you to create a trust if you don't understand how to communicate with debt collectors. You get what I'm saying? I've spoken to many people that says, oh, I got my trust set up and blah, 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 but they don't even know how to communicate with a debt collector. What is the point of you having a private trust? You're not even going to use it yet. If you don't know how to use it, don't get a trust first or try to work so hard to get that. Learn and understand the administrative procedures so that you can say, oh, I see how my trust can give me more leverage. And then I wouldn't even, some of the debts that we have, or at least some of the things that people are hoping to get out of, $200, $300, $400, $1,000 debt, and you don't have a trust set up, but some of us are trying to do this process first before you start to challenge a $400 or $500 debt or something like that. Okay. So I'm going to break down how to be able to set up a private trust. Make sure you have a notebook and a notepad. Remember, this explainer is going to be in the school community, so make sure you tap in. Number one, the step one is the declaration of the trust. Okay. You want to draft a private irrevocable trust declaration, signed, dated, witnessed, and notarized. Okay. This is a private legal paper. Okay. It's not a form or what people think. They got to fill out a form, and it's no form. Okay. It's your own declaration. You could draft it. You can have a CPA lawyer draft it for you. Okay. In your declaration, you want to clearly define the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. Now, you also want to state the purpose: to manage, discharge, and settle all commercial obligations and assets lawfully held in a trust. You get what I'm saying? This is what's on the declaration. It pretty much breaks down the purpose of your trust. And the key is that it's going to be signed, dated, witnessed, and notarized. You want to keep this for your private records. Okay. So along with the declaration, you want to also add a couple of other documents. You want to make sure to add a Schedule A. Okay. The Schedule A is going to list what initially funds the trust. Then you want to prepare a certificate or abstract of the trust, which is going to break down the trust name, date, and trustee. And this is going to go to the bank or title companies for that particular asset. After you have done that, then you want to get an EIN. Most people skip those steps and get an EIN first, because you can go on the IRS website and create a irrevocable trust and grab the EIN. It's the private documentation beforehand that's going to make it private. All right. After you do get your EIN, then you can open up a trust bank account. Okay. Or brokerage. You want to deposit the cash in the account, assets, whatever the case may be. And after you have done this, then you can start assigning your debt to your trust. So that was a little mouthful, but we're going to come back to that. Okay. Again, I'm not an expert on a trust because I don't use a trust to discharge debt. But there's a lot of people that ask questions about the trust, and I know how it works. Okay. So I'm just going to tell you why keep it away just because I haven't done it. Okay. But the people who do have a trust, who's already in this energy or frequency, they're going to want this info. Okay. And it's for those people that, want to discharge their debt and they think that this is the only way to go. Also, I want to point out that when people are trying to be sovereign, this is it. It's them creating a private trust, assigning the debts to their private trust. Okay. You already are sovereign. The paperwork that people are doing is creating a private trust. Okay. I could dive into the UCC1, using the UCC1 to claim ownership from whatever your straw man, your birth certificate, whatever the case may be. I could talk about that, but I'm not going to talk about that. So I don't want to ramble on, but let's just talk about the aspect of assigning the debt to your trust. You want to use an assignment of debt instrument where you assign any alleged obligation to your private trust for settlement. This moves the claim from your personal liability to the trust commercial jurisdiction. And remember, the commercial jurisdiction under trust is much stricter in the sense of bigger consequences. After you have assigned the debt to the trust, then you want to issue a notice of assignment to the creditor. Notify the creditor that all matters regarding the alleged account are now under a trust administration. Include your declaration of trust number and a notice of tender for value referencing UCC 3-603. You're informing them that settlement will occur privately and lawfully. Just that alone, can't you see how we're now having a business conversation? Can't you see how if you decide to say, hey, we've assigned this debt to the trust and the trust is now going to handle the obligation, that is just like you signing over a debt to, a family member. And the family member has record that they've accepted that assignment. Well, what would the bank be mad about? The bank would just say, you know what? Okay. So this person is now liable. And now they have the jurisdiction to come after that person now. Okay? So once you put them on notice that that the trust is now taking the assignment of the debt, now we want to start to follow the set off or tendering steps. Okay? The trust can issue a lawful tender, whether it's going to be remittance, bond, or promissory note under a seal. But I want you to know that this is not you refusing payment. It's fulfilling the obligation in equity, which is higher than at law, okay? Equity regards as done that which ought to be done, okay? So another thing you want to do is you want to record and maintain an honor, all right? You want to keep all your communications private. You want to maintain your administrative record because this becomes the evidence of settlement and discharge. A lot of times, and I broke this down, set them the trust, assign them the trust, communicate through the trust the same way you would without it. It's the assignment that makes people free, but it's not like they're free of the obligation. It's just out of their name. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that's not flying over your head. However, even though you may know these steps, it is up to you to understand the process. Okay, just because you have a trust doesn't put you on a higher level than someone who doesn't have a trust. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't mean you'll be able to get away with more than a person who doesn't have a trust. Oh, if I do it wrong, then I'll suffer less consequences than this person. That's not the case. Another thing I want to point out that I didn't particularly put in my notes is the fact that your trust has to be structured properly before you discharge any debt. Meaning, you can't be the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary all in one, okay? You either have to be the trustee of another trust or the grantor and appoint a trustee, okay? If you don't understand the trust model, that's okay. Continue to research, but don't fret over doing a trust if you don't understand the trust model because it's not always needed. I will say that it will give you more power if you know what you're doing. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be on the same playing field as someone who doesn't have a trust. Okay? So here's the laws that support the process. I will pull these up, but just write these down. UCC 3-603, which is the tender of payment. If you send a set off or a tender of payment and they refuse it or dishonor it, then the law says that it is discharged. So it's almost saying that as long as you send it, it's going to get discharged regardless. Number 2, 15 U.S.C. 1692G is the Debt Validation Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. This specific statute talks about your right to validate debt and accounting. Okay? So you can ask them where they got the money from. You can ask them if they actually have legal authority to collect on the debt. This is under 15 U.S.C. 1692G. Then we dive into 12 U.S.C. 95A, which essentially says that all commercial transactions are public obligations. Okay, so this just affirms that the United States already has accepted responsibility of obligations. Okay, and also at the same time that transactions are obligations. So even if I mean, of course, but not unless you don't just see obligation as me owing somebody, but you also see obligation as money, okay? If you see obligation as money, then you'll understand that 12 U.S.C. is also saying that your commercial transaction is of value, okay? And then we can also talk about 31 U.S.C. 5118. It says, no one can demand payment in a particular form of currency, meaning lawful tender can be satisfied through accounting set-off. So under 31 U.S.C. 5118, it'll probably say something about, is this the legal tender or is this the, it's the gold clauses and consent to sue, okay? I'll pull that up for y'all since I did. 31 U.S.C. 5118, gold clauses and consent to sue. So I bring these up because this is the legal merit behind being able to discharge debt or communicate with a debt collector, okay? Same laws, but now you are delivering it through a trust, which gives you a little bit more leverage, okay? Or a lot more. Once the debt is assigned to a private trust, the matter moves into equity, and equity always seeks balance. Now, here's one thing I want to say about that real quick, about, a lot of times they argue and say, well, you know, see, let's go back one. This one, this, Article 1. We're gonna go to this. So in the 1-103 says construction of uniform commercial code to promote its purposes and policies, applicability of supplemental principles of law. Long story short, a lot of times though, the UCC modernizes law, okay? But given the fact that the UCC modernizes law, it doesn't explicitly talk about things like estoppel, fraud, misrepresentation, duress, coercion, mistake, bankruptcy, equity, law merchant, capacity to contract, or principles of law. It doesn't like explicitly state that. Okay, they try to make it modern, and a lot of things are like not really like seen before the eye. Okay, but I want you to know that equity supplements the UCC. So in essence, it's always understanding that equity seeks balance. That's the part that the UCC doesn't really explain. It doesn't explain, it will make it seem like they don't care about balance. They just care about procedures. But the reality is that if there is an element where the balance is off, equity does fall into the case. Okay. Now, here's some common misunderstandings. It's not magic paperwork that you have to do, that you're just going to become free, sovereign. And as soon as you get your trust, you are immediately, all your debts are going to be discharged. You can have your trust and your debts can still be assigned to you. This is why after you create your trust, you have to assign the debt to your trust. Okay. It's also not about refusing to pay or send fake instruments. Okay. A lot of people will talk about like a gold check, or they'll talk about all these different types of, you know, instruments that I couldn't explicitly look up in law. Okay. I mean, I understand what a negotiable instrument is, right? But let's just use the things that are already available to us. Not one instrument is going to work more than the other. It's just a matter of, do you know how to communicate the value of that instrument and how to get them to shift the burden of proof, or how to shift the burden of proof onto them and make them perform on that instrument. Okay. Whether it's to explain why it doesn't work, whether it's to provide the full disclosure of the account. It only really brings things into question. So it doesn't matter what type of form you use. No form is better than another. It doesn't matter. What is better is understanding the knowledge and why these things work. Okay? These things don't work because one is better than the other. Most of the time it's circumstantial, and it depends on how that debt collector is communicating with you, if they're deciding to move in honor or not. Because it's about establishing lawful standing and moving obligations from personal to fiduciary status. It's about administration, not rebellion. Wow. I never really, I remember doing this and really trying to rebel against the system, but it wasn't even that. I just wanted to be free. I wanted to get out of the shackles. Okay, I didn't want to be confined because of those exterior things. I wanted to be able to control those exterior things. Okay, not really like fight against it because I think it's wrong. Because to be honest, I understand why they do what they do. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of an analogy. You know, there are multiple perspectives. First person perspective, second person perspective, third, fourth, fifth, sixth person perspective. Okay. Where yes, ideally in most of our minds, it is wrong to make me pay for essential services or whatever the case may be until you own a business. Then when you own a business, you understand that that is value, you know, that people will pay for. So that's why they're charging me. I can either pay for it, I can either get upset, or I can challenge it. So it's about making decisions and choices. Most people lose not because they're wrong, but because they argue from the wrong position. They're arguing from emotion and not like real legal merit. Real facts. It's just emotion. Or they may have a fact, but it's led with emotion. So it's never really heard, at least in a court. Now, here's the bigger picture. From discharge to financial freedom. That's the whole point of this channel, is to position you to become financially free. If you decide to employ these strategies, great. If you don't, great. But here's what I want you to understand, that financial freedom is what's going to bring you closer to freedom. That makes sense. And I can make this about a level of consciousness. To reach your highest form of consciousness, You truly have to be able to focus on yourself. But if you're focusing on debts, if you're focusing on money and pay and trying to figure out how you're going to make your next dollar, you will never have time to truly sit and spend with yourself. Okay. Another thing I'm going to highlight is to enjoy this process. Don't fret. Stop trying to get a result tomorrow, because whatever comes fast will leave fast. Be okay with taking the long road. Be okay with having long-term thinking. Okay. So once you understand how to manage debt in a private trust, you'll realize it isn't about wiping balances. It's more about reclaiming the jurisdiction over your energy. When you master the structure, you can use your trust to acquire assets privately, like vehicles, properties, or investments. This is probably how wealthy people are able to overcome taxes. I'm not saying you can overcome taxes, because you still have to pay taxes for certain things. You can't completely get away from paying taxes, but there are certain things that the trust can be able to block. Okay. You can open a business credit line in the name of the trust. You can build cash flow systems such as digital products, doing some level of consulting, creating a brand, and driving and getting income simply off of your name. That right there won't touch your personal liability, because if you create something, because you created something, created a value, now you're going to get that energy back if you put in the equal energy. Because financial freedom is not about escaping money. It's about mastering the flow of money. Stop trying to escape the system. Learn it. Okay. It's like trying to put a person in a place that they don't belong. You know, right now in this day and age, it's two parties that's disagreeing but still want to be in the same rooms. One party wants the other room to think like them, and the other party wants them to think like them, because they're wrong for some whatever reason. But the thing is, the reality is that nobody is wrong. Okay? It's just that their level of thinking is much different from yours, or their perspective is different. So how about this? Go somewhere else. Get in another room. And until we stop trying to force different people to be in the same room and allow different people to be where they want to be, we'll forever be stuck. So let's talk about the aspect of the United States. If you are trying to escape money, go live in the woods. But I'm sure you don't want to do that. I'm sure you want to drive. I'm sure you want to live in a home. I'm sure you want to use the roads. I'm sure you want the lights. I'm sure you want water and all those things. And you don't want to be a caveman. So guess what? Stop trying to escape money, understand it, and learn money. Do you gather that? Stop thinking of trust law as paperwork and start seeing it as a gateway to private banking and wealth creation. Okay? The whole point of the trust is so that you can now bring your matters private, from your assets to your debt to the communication that you have with investors, okay? To protect your assets. And you can pretty much have your trust do whatever it is that you want them to do, okay? My final note that I'm going to say, my final word, okay? When you learn how to do this, you stop playing the debtor role and you start moving into the creditor. You start moving into creation. You start truly creating the value and understanding that you bring value. When you understand that you bring value, not only will that help you in this particular sense, but it'll help you in life and in business, because you won't allow someone to take advantage of you. You will allow people, you will start to position yourself to where people can see your value. And if you understand that when you bring value, you have to get value back. They have it in the law, not because it's the way they want to do it, but I think that it's just a universal law that cannot be overcome. It'll be wrong if you exchange something with somebody and it wasn't of equal value, or both parties didn't think it was going to be an equal value. That will be wrong inherently. So become the value. Be okay with being the value. Stop trying to be consumed and start creating. All right, I'm done yapping, y'all. If you want to learn more about this, comment the word trust down below. If you want me to talk a little bit more about trust, specific parts got a little choppy in the video. But if you want me to talk a little bit more about this, like the video, hit the subscribe button, turn on the post notifications, comment down below what you think and what your situation is. Lastly, tap into the school. I already told you guys that I'm going to drop an explainer of this exact video in my school community. It's free for the first 7 days, and then it's 27 bucks a month. Okay. Number three, tap in on my socials, Instagram, social media, whatever the case may be. Just do those things. I also have a mentorship where I specifically help people with understanding the law, understanding how it applies when it comes to credit repair, positioning you so that you can be able to fund yourself, and lastly, helping you become financially free depending on your situation. So hit that application button, talk to us, and then see where you align, see if we align. All right. So thank you guys for watching again. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all in the next one. This video is sponsored by the Fund Yourself Academy. My step-by-step system designed to help you fix your credit, get funding, and build real financial freedom from scratch. If you're tired of feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or just ready to stop living paycheck to paycheck, this is where it changes. Inside the Academy, I break down everything from consumer law secrets that they don't teach in school to how to remove negative items and boost your score, get access to business funding, and start building multiple income streams online. Whether you're just starting out or ready to level up your game and get the bag, this is your playbook. We've got tools, templates, dispute letters, mentorship calls, private community access, and an exact roadmap I use to leave my 9-to-5 and create time freedom. But only for a limited time, you can get access to the Fund Yourself Academy on a free trial basis for the next 7 days. And then after that, you pay less than $1 a day at 27 bucks a month if you like it. No fluff, just facts and just freedom. Go to the fundyourselfacademy.com or hit the link in the description to join now, because nobody's coming to save you, but you can fund yourself.